So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. This is all about women in comedy. Um, Big thanks to the Writers Guild Foundation for partnering with us on this event. We're excited to talk to this amazing panel of female comedians and female voices. I love when it's all women. And we also have Dustin, who's going to speak here for moment about Writers Guild. So happy to have you here, Dustin. I'm going to get to you in 1 second. I just need to get through a couple housekeeping things. I hate using that word housekeeping. Who hates using housekeeping? Okay, so since we're at a joint event with Writers Guild Foundation, it is our duty at ISA to tell you a little bit about ISA if you don't know anything about us. We are a writers first organization, striving to push writers to the next level in their careers by offering a multitude of resources, including contests, events, free classes, opportunities like tonight to hear wonderful creatives talking about their craft. We also have opportunities to develop your own craft and connect with other writers and industry pros. And if you haven't yet, we encourage you to go to our website, www.networkisa.org, and check it out. You can create a free profile and where you list your screenplays, your awards, your success stories, your posters, your pitch decks, and those are now shareable on social media and email. And it's a database that's searched by thousands of industry pros who are looking for talented writers like yourself. And if you are an upgraded membership, which we advise you to do if you're very serious, you get discounts on everything on the site, including, I believe you get 4 free contests a year entry. So that kind of pays for the whole thing as it is. That is the spiel about ISA. Please go check it out. And if you have any questions, we're always here to answer those at ISA. With that being said, I'm going to throw it over to Dustin, who's going to talk a little bit about the Writers Guild Foundation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, hi everybody. Huge thanks again to ISA for having us on as a partner for this event. My name is Dustin. I'm the Director of Events and Communications here at the Writers Guild Foundation. For those of you who aren't aware, the WGF is the nonprofit arm of the Writers Guild of America West. So we're associated with but independent of the WGA. And because we're a little bit more public facing than the Guild, and our mission is to preserve and promote the craft of writing for television, we are actually, all of the resources that we provide are free to use and open to the public. So we host public events, panels, and workshops with writers and industry experts. We have community programs that help kickstart writers' careers, and we have a bunch of phenomenal resources. Probably our biggest one for those who live in or are visiting LA is our script library at the Writers Guild HQ. That's free and open to the public by appointment only, and it houses tens of thousands of scripts from produced movies and TV shows. Again, you don't have to be a member of the WGA to take advantage of our resources. There's a couple of links that are below that are scrolling, but I do want to call out a few specific ones. Signing up for our newsletter is where we announce updates first about the foundation. And then there's also a link to learn more about that library that I mentioned. We also just opened up applications for our Writers Access Support Staff Training Program. That's a new program that offers training opportunities to help place emerging talent in writer's assistant and script coordinator roles, particularly writers who are BIPOC, LGBT, disabled, or over the age of 50. So links to the program page and the application guidelines are, again, below. They're also on our website, wgfoundation.org. And that application window is open until September 5th. And before I turn it back to you, I also want to extend an offer to those who are tuning in live. So we do have a discount code for our upcoming event, Sublime Primetime, which is held right here in Los Angeles on Thursday, August 22nd at 7 p.m. at the Writers Guild Theater. It's an event celebrating the Emmy-nominated writers for outstanding writing for a comedy series and for drama series. So if you go to wgfoundation.org/events, or the longer link that just popped up below, and go click on the general admission ticket and then enter the discount code Sublime5, you'll get $5 off that ticket to the event. So the code again is Sublime5. It's right there below, and it'll also be in the chat. That is it from me. Thank you again so much. I'm going to turn it back over to you now.
Thank you so much. And Dustin has to leave us because he's hosting trivia night. which I think is super awesome, honestly.
Thank you. All right. Take care, everybody.
All right. Bye, Dustin. Okay. So we are going to get started. I will just give a brief little bio of everyone on our panel, and then I'm going to throw it to you all with questions. At the end of the night, we're going to open it up to questions for you all who are watching. If you have a burning question, you can go ahead and put it in the comments, and we will flag it and pull it over and try to get to those at the end if we don't cover that as we're speaking. So throw those in, have fun with it, have any comments. Just don't be rude to us because I get real feisty when I see a rude comment. Just real feisty. So let's just keep it nice and let's have fun. Okay, so first up, I'm going to talk about Miss Caitlin Arcand. She is not only our marketing manager at ISA, but she's also a producer, writer, and comedian herself. She has worked in production with companies like Netflix, ESPN, the Ivy League Network, and Luminant Media, and has produced award-winning films that have been showcased at Slam Dance, Wicked Queer Film Festival, and Los Angeles Indie Short Fest. As a performer, Caitlin was named one of BuzzFeed's Women to Watch for her women and LGBTQ plus centered humor platform, inspired by 2 sold-out years of Boston's only all-female comedy show, which Caitlin created and hosted. So that is Caitlin. Next up, we have Miss Beth Curry, who's with us. Beth is a multi-hyphenate who used to perform on Broadway and has also appeared in many TV shows. If you want that info, go to her IMDb Pro. She won the Nickel Fellowship in 2020 for her script Lemon, which was optioned by Mandalay Pictures. Her script The Wonder Yard, starring Tony Shalhoub and Jackie Weaver, with Rosemary Rodriguez attached to direct, is funded by Concourse Media and is due to shoot in early 2025. And she has another feature produced by Mike Metaboy called Almost Normal, with Dan Aykroyd attached to star and produce, due to shoot in spring of 2025. So Beth is very busy on the feature side. Next up, we have Rupinder Gill. She is a Canadian writer currently writing on Ghosts on CBS, which is really good if you haven't seen it. Our own Max Tim is loving that show, so he's a big fan. She was also a writer-director on Mindy Kaling's HBO Max series, The Sex Lives of College Girls, and has written on series such as Peacock's Rutherford Falls and multiple seasons of Schitt's Creek, which is... she's also the author of the memoir On the Outside, Looking Indian, which we are going to talk about tonight, and has written for The Onion, McSweeney's, and O Magazine. And last but not least, we have Ida Yazdi. Ida is an Iranian-American screenwriter and former architect, which is super interesting, who is currently a staff writer on a new NBC half-hour comedy, which didn't list what it's called, so maybe that's a secret up to this point. She was selected for the 22-23 NBC TV Writers Program and was accepted into the Star's Take the Lead Writers Intensive, the Writers Guild Foundation's Writers Access Training Program, which Dustin just talked about, and Women in Film Writers Mentorship Program. So we will get to talk to Ida about all of those fellowships and her path as we move forward. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited. I love female voices and funny female voices. So this is going to be fun. Okay, first question that I want to ask all of you, and we'll keep it kind of light. Who are your biggest influences that you grew up with? They can be funny or not funny, but who influenced you as you were growing up or coming up through your career? And anyone can go. I'll go to Caitlin first.
So I know we're like, there's so many female comedians that can inspire me, but the first stand-up I ever wrote was roasting my family. So I have to say that it was my family because I had a very chaotic childhood. A lot of things. I still have a very chaotic adulthood, and I just feel like the way we handled things really fueled my comedy. But in terms of famous people, Kristen Wiig was my first like comedy idol. I remember I would like act out her surprise party sketch in my living room for my parents, and they would watch the whole thing. So she was my first like major inspiration, and I was like, I want to be just like her.
Awesome. What about you, Beth?
I would follow with chaotic childhood. I mean, I think I was like in a little bit of a bubble growing up because I was living in my own brain and imagination. So, you know, I think as a
Your mic is like cutting in and out a little bit. I don't know if it's
oh,
your.
is it my hearing? Is it like
It's like it's still doing it. I don't know if maybe you want
to
just go directly from your computer. I'm not sure. Maybe try that. We'll go to Ida and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, similarly to Caitlin, I feel like everyone had like their first inspiration really does come from their family. So like, yeah, definitely my family, but also I grew up watching a lot of Elaine May's films, and she was huge for me. A New Leaf was like always playing as when I was a child, and then as I grew up, learning that she was also a writer and prolific director as well. It was just so inspiring to see um, a woman at that time like doing so much behind the scenes and in front of the camera as well. And she's hilarious, and her work is so funny. And so, yeah, she was definitely like someone I was inspired by and aspired to be.
Awesome. Beth, let's go back and try you again. See if it works. Nope.
Oh no.
Wait.
Oh, sorry. It just said I was muted.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say influences, yes, chaotic childhood, sort of a deflection away from being like an awkward, redheaded, high foreheaded person. So that was basically deflection. And then also like musical theater. I was involved in musical theater. So I always loved Mel Brooks. Eventually got to do Young Frankenstein with him, which was amazing. So kind of that broad humor. But as I've gotten more into writing, I'm like, okay, we'll pull that back. But I guess those are my influences.
Okay, awesome. Rupinder.
Well, anybody who knows me knows that my favorite show always was and still is The Golden Girls. And I used to watch 2 episodes every day after school. And even as a 10-year-old, I didn't understand a lot of the jokes, but I just loved seeing 4 women and 4 older women being that funny. And it was just amazing to me. And I still love that show so much. And from there, I feel like I just really got into writers and female creators who were doing very female forward stuff. Tina Fey, Mindy Kaling, people like that, I feel like, who were putting characters on screen that I hadn't seen before. I feel like those were, really formative experiences for me, TV-wise, that really inspired me to get into it myself.
Awesome. Did you guys know that the Golden Girls were like 50?
Yeah, I know.
And had given up on life and living together, and it's
crazy.
so like, what? I thought they were like 75, 80, 85. They were like 50. It's crazy times. But I love that show too. Such a great show. Okay, so next question, just another like icebreaker thing. What's the most annoying part or annoying comment that you get about being a female comedy writer? Does anyone have any good ones?
I mean, the obvious is everyone's always like, tell me a joke.
Right.
Like, if you're a comedian, then be funny right now. Or
funny.
I have something for your skit. And then they'll proceed to tell me the least interesting thing I've ever heard in my life. Those are the 2 big ones.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's like just generally like the expectation to entertain, like once they hear that you've written on a comedy show, they're like, I hate that expectation so much.
Right. All of a sudden you're like on.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
That's a good question. This is stumpy.
All right. I will move on. Well, let's talk about just in general being a female in the comedy space. And I feel like, everyone wants to laugh. Everyone wants a good laugh. Why still in 2024 do you guys think that it's so hard to get something comedic made? I feel like we all want it and we're all asking for it. And there seems to be, especially in films currently, especially with female roles that are funny, like it's so small. So does anyone have any comments about the state of the industry right now? And is there Is there something to look forward to? Are you feeling like there's a breakthrough or no? Beth, do you want to
I mean, I think the state of the industry is really tough right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're all really feeling the dry rub. It's a hard time to want to keep going forward, but it will correct itself like all things, and we just have to do it because it's our oxygen. I think for women in film, my lead of The Wonder Yard coming up is a 75-year-old woman, and there's a lot of comedy in it, and it comes from just kind of just truth and just ridiculousness of being an older woman, kind of breaking conventions and stuff. So I think that people are hungry for it. I know other women are hungry for it. So I don't know if there is still that resistance to it, but maybe there is.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Beth. I think it's unfortunately just a challenging time for everybody in this industry. I feel like personally the past couple of years have felt maybe a bit more encouraging, in a post Barbie world, that people are maybe willing to take a small bit more of a chance, and maybe 1% more of a chance. There are a lot of superhero films with male leads that fail, and they'll keep making those, but if a female one fails, it feels like an experiment that went wrong and you can't do that again, and that's not something that will course correct itself in the next year or two, but it does feel like some headway has been made, and I want to feel positive about it, and I feel like I've been doing this a long time, and it has felt incrementally better, and if small increments, but maybe I feel like we're moving in the right direction.
That's good. I think that's encouraging. I like that. Yes, post Barbie world, but I agree about it feels like whenever a woman fails, oh, can't do that again. Oh, but men fail up all the time, Okay, so I want to go around to each of you and have you talk a little bit about when you first either knew you were funny and that was something that kind of the bug, you got the bug, or you knew you had that desire to write or perform or put yourself out there. And Caitlin, I can start with you.
So I won't say I knew I was funny because internally that's still up for debate. I don't know. I don't like to assign that to myself. But like Beth, I grew up in the theater world, and I never quite fit into the mold of the female lead, the romantic lead. I literally had a drama teacher be like, "You're not believable as a romantic interest." So I used to get cast as either the villain or the mother or basically anything that was just a comedic relief side character. And I would of course go all out because I was like, well, if they're not going to give me the lead, I gotta make my time up here worth it. So I don't know. I found that was exciting for me to take on very outlandish roles and be like, oh, people enjoy this. But what really made me want to do stand-up was when I started doing cabaret singing shows, and it allowed me to not really play a character but be myself on stage and more so interact with people, and I found that to be really fun and exciting, and I didn't have to put on a mask or try to compete with other people for a role or whatever it was. So I think that was my big defining moment. That, and also I used to tell people really traumatic things about myself and then laugh afterwards, and everyone would be like, what is are you okay? So I was like, maybe I should talk about this stuff on stage.
Amazing. Rupinder, let's go to you.
I actually came to writing pretty late. I didn't start writing until I was 30. So I'm always very encouraging of people who've had, like me, a completely other career, never thought to do this, because growing up in Canada, I didn't know a single person who did this for a living. This was just a very foreign world to me. I'm always so bewildered by people who grew up in Los Angeles and view this as a normal job, because for me, this is like the planet Mars. I never even knew someone who knew someone who did this for a living. So the first thing I wrote was actually my book, and I was working as on the business side of television at a big company in Canada, and I asked for time off to write it, assuming I'll just go back to this job after I write this book. And they said, no, that's not how it works. So then I just had to leave that job, and I decided, I guess I'll, go fully into writing and give this a shot. And it was a very slow start, but I feel like it took me forever to think this was something I could actually do. So it was a real, slow trajectory for me. And then I didn't move to Los Angeles till 7 years after that. So I feel like for me, I enjoyed writing my whole life, but it wasn't something that I ever thought was an actual career. It just seemed like a hobby. And then it was, again, a pleasant surprise to find out that you could somehow turn that into an actual job.
Well, speaking of your book, why did you decide to write that book? What was the catalyst that sort of made you say, hey, I'm going to write a book?
Well, I'll tell this story very shortly. I grew up in a very, my parents are Indian immigrants, and I grew up about an hour outside of Toronto, where we were one of the only Indian families. And I had a very, different childhood from all of my friends. Never went to camp or took any lessons or learned how to swim. A very sort of Indian childhood, but no longer in India. So when I was 30, I realized, I'm an adult and I can learn these things now. So I signed myself up for a bunch of lessons and learned how to swim, and went to camp, went to Disney World, which I'd never been to. And I was just writing a little blog about it for my friends, keeping them up to date on that. And then that somehow just morphed into this book. And again, I thought, that's all. I just write this book. I go back to my regular life. I didn't think that it goes anywhere from there.
Right. That's amazing. We'll get more into that and sort of like your path after the book in a little while. Beth, let's go to you.
Well, I liked you switching the question a little bit about writing. I was kind of later in life writer too. I was doing musical theater, as I said, and I remember I was backstage because I was doing Young Frankenstein, and I had like one number in the very beginning where I was like singing about my tits, and then like 40 minutes off stage, and I would like fall asleep. I did like P90X, and then I started writing. And I think it's that moment where there's that barrier where you're like, just keep going. It's so easy to just be like, oh, fuck it. I can never do this. And I remember I was copying like a Curb Your Enthusiasm, the structure of it to like figure it out. And then I had a reading of it, and people were like, oh, that was really funny. I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. And I think like, and then I spent the next a lot of years sitting, hemorrhoid to privet, just like working at it. And it's just a slog. It's just a delightful slog. I love it so much. I always say it's my oxygen. And when I don't do it, I don't feel good. So I know that it's something that brings me so much joy. And especially with comedy, like the funny things are usually the things that I wanted to cut. Usually the things that, oh, I shouldn't put that in. That's too weird, or that's too, and then people go, oh, I love that moment, or I love this thing. And you're like, I was going to cut that. So I feel like finding your own weird is always like your superpower.
That's some great advice. Ida.
Yeah. I too also came into writing sort of later. I was approaching 30. I came from a totally different career. I used to work in architecture. So yeah, the idea of writing, much less comedy writing, was really, really new for me. But like storytelling was always a part of my life. I just didn't really think of it as a viable career option. It was just something that, like, I come from a Middle Eastern family. It's ingrained in us, we just sit around and like tell each other stories constantly. That's how we entertain ourselves. So, and it was always like a competition to see who can tell the best story, who can get the best laugh. So it was always like it's ingrained in me as a person, and I would do it as a hobby. But it wasn't until like my late 20s where I was really miserable doing my job, where I was like, why can't I just turn this into my career? And so I quit my job, and I sort of blindly pursued this idea of writing. And I just wanted to be like a screenwriter. I found comedy as I was writing. Like the things I was writing, it was organically just like people thought it was funny. And so like, yeah, the rest just sort of kind of organically came into place. But yeah, I'm a late bloomer. Things kind of like have been happening a little late. But
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about from your bio, you're like that fellowship
yes,
person. That you're the
yes, I
unicorn
am.
that's like the winner of the fellowships, right?
Well,
Can you talk a little bit about that path for
yeah,
you?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah, so when I quit my job, I was sort of like I was really floundering. I didn't know like how to break in because in architecture or in any other industry, it's sort of like you apply for a job and you work your way up, and then you apply for the job at this like job database. It's not like that in film and TV, obviously. And so I was trying every avenue I could take, I was taking, and the thing that sort of stuck or opened up for me was the fellowship avenue. But, like, I did not put all my eggs in that basket because it's really just, like, it really depends on who connects with your work and, like, because it's tough. But that was the avenue that sort of opened up, and the first fellowship that I got was actually the Writers Guild Foundation Support Staff Training Program. It's a great program, apply. And through that, I was able to, like, get on a few shows as an assistant, and I never got promoted through those shows because they got canceled after the first season, but, like, it helped me. I got room experience, and it helped me get other fellowships like NBC, and then those fellowships ultimately helped me get me staffed. But so start small and work your way up, and just, like, try and try, and I got a lot of rejections, obviously, but, it
How
sort
many
of paid off.
times did you apply for different fellowships before you actually were chosen? Was this a first time thing or did you have to apply multiple years?
Was For NBC, it was my first time.
Mhm.
If For the Writers Guild Foundation, was also my first time. But I've been applying to Sundance for like 5 years, and they don't, you know what I mean? Like they don't, Idaho.
Right.
So it really just depends. Sometimes you apply with the same exact script, and like
Yeah.
you will get all the way through in one, like, and get selected for a really prestigious fellowship, and then another fellowship won't even like you won't even get to the second round. It just, again, it really depends on like who's reading you and what it's like that year, what the rest of the cohort looks like. So it's mysterious. I don't really get it, but
Right. Right. Okay. So Beth, for you, when you were acting and on the stage and then you started writing, when did that shift for you? When was that moment where you felt like things were starting to happen or you had your break? Was there a time or was it just a slow build? And how did you keep going?
I'm still waiting for that. I think. Oh, no, I just think there's never an arrival spot. Even if people on the outside think, "Oh, you've arrived," it's like you never do arrive, or there's always something else you're chasing. So you have to enjoy the process because we'll always be chasing it. So might as well enjoy this. But I think like I still act. I still, I did Hacks this year. I did SEAL Team, Lone Star 911. Like, I think everything feeds everything feeds each other. So I think it really helps to have the actor brain, especially for dialogue. Just kind of know like, oh, I wouldn't want to say that, or just kind of you can feel as an actor what you'd want to say. And that to me that's fun, and that's musical as well. Dialogue, funny, quippy, bantery dialogue. I love it as a way of shielding for characters. When a character is bantering, what are they hiding? I just really love it as a way to skirt around some things. So the two things I have set up right now are both dramedies, and very much in that tone. So yeah, I didn't answer your question. Never arrived. Still waiting for a arrival date.
Was there something that shifted in your writing that got the attention of? Was it a contest? I mean, was it the Nickel Fellowship? Was that the thing that sort of like?
I think people always, and that's a look, fellowships and winning those things. Like Ida said, it's so just random. You never know who you're going to get to read and whatnot. It is sort of like a lottery sometimes. And then when you win it, it's not like everything just changes overnight. You still, it will be a little bit of a push, and it will help. There's a community of people around you for the first time, which is fantastic. But there's never just a moment where things just kind of go like, oh, I've arrived. It is just you just are constantly working at it. And I think what happened for me is just continuing to show up, sit here and work, that you kind of understand your voice, you understand your process of writing. So I think that's, for me, that's why I come to it and need to sit down and discover more and work and grow. So it's never an arrival, it's just a process.
Right. Okay. And Caitlin, for you, since you are more in the performer space, but you're also a producer and a writer yourself, what was it for you that what was that first success for you that you felt like, okay, I can do this and I can be taken seriously in this industry?
I don't know. Like Fessa, like I don't feel like I've arrived yet at that, but I do think like your first really good stand-up performance, like when you actually get a really good response, is a validating experience. But I feel like it's been, I've dabbled in so many things. Like I've been in theater, I've been in music, I've done a lot of things. But something in the air feels different now. Like I'm in the actual right space now that I'm supposed to be doing. But I do think the journey of stand-up and even improv was so important to get me here, because when I first started writing stuff, I did not know who I was. Like I read stuff that I wrote when I was like 16, 17, and I was like, that is trash. Who was that? What is it even about? What was even her perspective? Like, what was she even writing about? So I feel like that was really important, like having to fend for myself on stage and rely on my own thoughts, especially in improv, has just been really important. And I feel like now I don't know if like my frontal lobe developed or what happened, but I feel like now I'm like, okay, I know what my perspective is now. Now I can actually write stuff that's actually me. And I think stand up and improv and assorted performing helped with that.
Okay. And Rupinder, let's talk about your path from book to TV. I mean, you have some really amazing credits, and working with Mindy Kaling, working on Schitt's Creek. How did that happen for you? What was the hustle? Like what was that journey for you?
It was, perhaps an unorthodox path, but I think if you ask any two writers, everybody's story is so completely different of how they got there. So I wrote the book. Again, I basically just didn't have a job anymore. So at that point, your safety net is gone. And if you're going to pursue something like this full time, you just have to start hustling. So I started submitting to a lot of online stuff. And I always recommend to people the website McSweeney's, which I think is amazing. I wrote so many things for McSweeney's at the beginning of my career, and they link to your email address, and your name is just popping up on the internet. And they're very democratic about just, accepting submissions from anybody. And I really respect all of the stuff that they have on the site. And their books. And I just felt like that was such a great starting ground for a comedy writer, because you can submit a thing a day. You just can wake up and just be trying to write something and send it to them. And it feels like a good just sort of way to exercise your muscles. And then I started writing for The Onion. And same way, I would just sort of submit stuff to anybody, anywhere, and try to get in. And then started to submit things to Canadian TV shows, because similar to, American late night shows, you can do little trials on shows where you're there for a week or two and you may be gone after that week or two. So I did that and worked in the late night space in Canada for a while. And then just, slowly sort of built it from there. I would work in the late night stuff and then started writing scripts, because I always knew that I wanted to be on the scripted side, and then got a job on a scripted series. And just, everything I wrote was basically the first time I'd ever written that thing. I'd never written a book. I'd never written a monologue joke. I'd never written a script. And it's just a learning process. And I think it's, that sort of your career, as Beth was saying, you're kind of always waiting to arrive, which I think can be a good thing. You should always, I'm always trying to learn something new and just feel like what I'm writing is new and that I still do have stuff to learn. So, I worked on some scripted series in Canada and then made the move over here. And then I got the job on Schitt's Creek, which is a Canadian show. So, it was right back there for that, which was a great, amazing learning experience, getting to write for and collaborate with Eugene and Catherine and everybody. And some of my best friends are people that I worked with on that show, which was incredible. But the funny thing is that show, which is, very successful now, when we were working on it, nobody had any clue what that show was. And we were writing it 2 years ahead of it airing. So when season 4 finally aired on Netflix, we were writing season 6, the last season of the show. And nobody had any clue what the show Schitt's Creek was. So it was very hard for me to get a job in Los Angeles because nobody had ever heard of this show. And then later they were like, oh, you worked for that show, but no one would employ me for that first year or two before the show came out. It was very challenging. But then, you kind of get in the system here. And I feel like my first job here, I met some great people. And I think every job I've gotten since then has been from a referral from somebody I worked with on one of those shows. So I feel like, like having a good base of people that you trust and who trust you and who you've had a good time working with. And, it doesn't always have to be even just on shows. Like, that's why I always encourage people also to take classes and like just build up a network of people in whatever, if you want to be in the comedy community, to be doing that, or to be in writing groups and just be building up a network of people as you come up together, because it is important to know people for when jobs come up, because when you're spending 10 hours a day, 5 days a week around a table with the same 8 people, you want to know that they're people you can spend a lot of time with. So what you're like as a person, I feel like does matter as much as what your writing sample is.
Amazing. You mentioned that when you were writing at the beginning, and kind of every new thing was the first time that you had written, like the monologue or whatever. What did you do to teach yourself how to do that? Were you just reading scripts? Were you taking classes? Like, what were you doing?
Yes, I took so many classes. I still read scripts. I still will read any script that comes out of any movie that I've watched. Any movie that came out last year, I've probably already read the script. So again, I'll just continue to always do that. That's, I think, like a thing you will do to lifelong learn. I still read books. I'll read any book on screenwriting. I took a screenwriting class last year. I don't think, again, there's ever a point where it ends. If you do enjoy doing this and kind of want to make it your career, I feel like it is advantageous to always be wanting to learn, and it only makes it more enjoyable. But I think there's so many more resources than there ever were when I started. Like, I know even Bill Lawrence, one of the most impressive showrunners out there, has a BBC course, I think, that people can just download about how to write a great pilot. And that's a resource that did not exist, when I was starting 16 years ago. So I think there are really excellent things out there now for people to learn from great professionals. And if you can get your hands on them, definitely do it.
And have you ever done any improv or stand-up?
I have. I much respect you, Caitlin. I'm terrible at both. But I do think it's important when you write to understand what an actor needs. So I've made myself do those also for my directing as well, just to do that, to know what an actor is looking for.
Awesome. Beth, I'll go to you. How do you continue your, do you take classes still? Do you voraciously read? Like, what is your continuing sort of education look like?
That's a really good question. I mean, I don't take classes right now. I'm just really adamant about writers groups. So I have a smaller writers group with 2 other women that I do pretty frequently. We put something up every 2 weeks, which is really good. And then I have a larger writers group, which is great because we bring something in, we have actors to put it on its feet. We bring like 10 to 12 pages, so we get to direct as well. So I like being active in that way. I'm not in acting class really anymore, or improv. And then just constantly writing. I feel like I probably should do more classes, but I feel like as long as I'm flexing my muscle and expanding and learning my craft, I think it's, but yeah, I should probably be in class.
There's no shame. I'm not shaming you. Just, you know, just you don't have to take class.
Just being active, and for me, creativity is like my air, and so I have to do it. If I'm not doing it, I'm not happy. So I will constantly be a proactive creator because of my own mental health.
Well, I think listening in a writer's group and listening to other people's words and watching, you know, what they're doing, that's completely educational. That's a class in itself, you know? So no shame in not taking classes. Ida, what about you? How do you keep yourself kind of up to speed?
Yeah. So yeah, I also have a writers group that I'm a part of, and we meet every other week, and that's really essential. It's also just, it's a nice deadline to have. Classes are great because it's just a great deadline to have, you know. I need the pressure of possibly disappointing others to like get to work every day. So it's really helpful. It works. It really does work. I also read a lot. I read, every show, every movie that I like or even don't like, I read their script. I read a lot of just books, like prose. I think that's also really important. A lot of writers that I meet, like screenwriters and TV writers, don't like read books, and I think it's a shame. And while I don't take a lot of classes anymore, I do watch a lot. Like every screenwriter you love probably has a great interview about their craft on YouTube. I watch those constantly, like every day. And I try and write every day, even if it's for 15 minutes, just thinking about your project and thinking about your scenes. It's just, I think it's essential. So that's pretty much what I do.
Okay. And Caitlin, what about you?
Yeah, so I also read a lot of books. Though I will say it's so hard now because I do script coverage for the ISA, and so at minimum I'm reading 6 to 8 scripts a week, and now going back to books after reading scripts is kind of hard for my brain because I drove back into a book last week and I was like, oh my God, why am I skimming to the dialogue? Like, I was like, why did I just skip that entire paragraph? Yeah, I was like, I need to get back into reading that. But I think for me, I mean, now I've kind of slowed down, but making my way up, it was a lot of like just throwing myself to the wolves. Like the first solo musical I did was because I submitted myself for a solo musical festival, though I did not have a show, but I submitted myself and I was like, oh, they're not going to pick me. And then they picked me. The festival was 90 days later. So I like had to, and I'm a serial researcher. So I was just like typing away, finding all the solo shows I could find. And I did that. And then just like not being like having nothing is like above what I want to help with. Like my first producer job was because I was booked on a show that was like a late night show in Boston where I live. And I was just like, hi, can I help? And they were like, what do you want to help with? And I was like, I don't know. I just want to help. And so I ended up being the assistant producer because I guess they were short staffed. I don't know. But I think just like constantly pushing the envelopes and never being afraid to like take on something has helped me learn so many things and still learn things.
That's great. This just spurred a question I'm very curious from each of you. How do you guys write? Do you need silence? Do you need music playing? Do you need, like, what is your, if you had the perfect setup to write, what does that look like? Beth? I saw your face. You were like,
No, I mean, it's changed so much over the years. Like I wasn't really good. My muscle has changed. I wasn't good writing at home. So then I would have I would do hot yoga and then I'd go in Starbucks for like 5 hours and write. And so it's all like rituals. I also live in San Luis Obispo, and like I could go and be like, that coffee shop, I wrote this script and that script, that coffee shop, you know, so it's been like that. But as I've gotten older and more disciplined, I can write at home now. But sometimes music, but I find myself then muting the music and then just writing, because sometimes I need to hear just, you know, and then I use that weird feature, when it talks back to you and it's like, hey, fucking asshole, like that role. So I mean, it's a process, and also, just go beyond that. Once I've done like a first draft, I will do coverage, pay for a couple people to get coverage just to make sure I'm not seeing holes, and then I will use my writers group, and then I might use like one specific person I like in coverage, and then after that, then I will maybe give it to my reps. But it will take a long time before I get there. So it's that for me has worked, I think, the most. But it doesn't have to be like surrounded by feathers and marbles or whatever. Those days are gone.
Ida, what about you?
Yeah, so I like to write at night. I like to, if I'm not working, I like to noodle around during the day and like, get the creative juice. It takes a while for the creative juices to get in, but so I like to write at night. I like to actually, whenever I'm working on whatever specific project I'm working on, I have like a list of comp movies or TV shows. And I have a TV in my office. I like to just have them on loop in the background as I write. And I'll just like, it's the same thing, just playing over and over again. And sometimes it's just on mute, but I feel like you kind of absorb the rhythm of whatever that movie or show is. And whenever I feel stuck, I'll just look up and then like, I'll get inspired by it. So yeah, it's weird, but that's what I do.
I like the weird. Rupinder.
I feel like I'm different dependent on the project. I mean, most of my career has been in TV, and in TV, if you're off on script, you have 1 week, you have to come back with the script. So you learn to write on a plane or just write, in an office or on set, or, you just have to be a little bit pragmatic about being able to do it anywhere, everywhere. But then I have different rules when it's me and my own stuff, and I'm working on a new book, and then I like to write at home, and I wake up in the morning before work and do a little bit of that, because I don't know how you do it. I'm so sleepy at night, and I'm like, the last thing I want to do is write. Then I want to watch what everybody else has written, and I just turn on the TV and we'll watch anything, but I don't want to write a word. But I feel like, TV, I feel like I have a different mentality towards, because it feels like my 9 to 5 and I just have to crank it out somehow. But when it's like my projects I'm writing for me, I feel like I'm giving them a little bit of a different universe in which I'm writing, and I'll, I put on the music, or, there's some silence, and write it at home.
Right. Caitlin, what about you? What's your ritual?
I don't really have a ritual, because I have to write when it like strikes me. Like I can't just like go sit down and write. But if I'm just brainstorming or just writing something like not super deep in there, I have to be in a crowded place. Like I like to like stop and watch people, because I don't know, it helps me think. So I always go to like a really crowded coffee shop, somewhere with a lot of noise, so I can't get in my own thoughts. But if I'm actually like deep into something, I have to do it in my house, because I act out every single thing I write. Like I will do the entire page full out performance to make sure that it sounds okay. And I usually do that really late at night, like you, Ida. Like the last thing I wrote, I was like on my porch, which was like pitch black, and it was like 2 a.m. and I was acting my poor husband would come in and I'd be like, shut up, I'm performing. So yeah, that I have to do in my house, because I don't think people would like that. But otherwise, crowded coffee shop.
That's funny. I love it. I love all the nuance of everyone's kind of styles. I've shifted mine as well. It used to be like at nighttime, and then as I've gotten older and I have a kid, I'm exhausted at night. There's nothing I want to do less than write. So I wake up really early in the morning, and I like try to get as much out of my brain, and then I have to give myself like 30 minutes after my shower to write, because that's when everything sort of goes, yes, that's a brilliant idea. And I'm like, scramble to like, get it written down. So I love each
I
other.
think that the reason why I write at night is, again, like I need to be in panic mode, which is like not healthy. Like and it's at night when I get into like full panic mode, because I'm like, I wasted the entire day. I didn't do anything. And then I like will vomit out, 40
See, I'm
pages.
the morning panic. I will wake up like, get it done, because your day is going to turn into your child's day. And, so kind of the same. I thrive on a deadline as well.
Yeah.
Thrive
Yeah.
in the panic of you have to do it or else I'll go to the refrigerator 82 times.
Yeah.
I'll check
Yeah.
my phone 100 times in 5 minutes, for that
Yeah.
really important text that isn't coming. So yeah, I need the pressure cooker. For the two of you that are at writers' rooms, writers, what can you just talk about what the writers' room looks like currently? Is it, are they smaller? Are they still happening? Like, what's that like for both of you?
Do you want to go, Ida?
Sure. Although I feel like you have more experience, but so I've been. It depends. Like, so when I was a script coordinator, I was in 2 drama rooms, and then I got staffed in a comedy room. They're very different, obviously. But so the comedy room that I was in, we had 8 writers. It was a multicam, so it feels different from a single cam. Obviously, it moves much, much faster. Like, you get a first draft on Monday, we're shooting it on Friday. So it's a lot of late nights. Um, uh, but yeah, I don't know if it's. I'm sorry. What was the question?
What is a writing room like currently?
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's just
What's the atmosphere? How many people, like that kind of just people
right,
we like details of things because
right.
it's like the mysterious writer's room. I
Oh,
think for
okay, right.
so
Yeah. So there was like 8 of us in the room. I was a staff writer in the room. And you hear this a lot, but it's true. There's like an unspoken hierarchy in the room. So most of the people pitching were the upper level writers. The trend that's been happening, and it was the same case in my room. It was very top heavy, so everyone was a co-EP, and then I was the staff writer. So like, um, so there wasn't a lot of you know mid-tier writers in the room. And so it was just like finding the right moments to pitch because you don't really want to interrupt the co-EPs who are going on like a 2-hour bit that won't end. So it's just like finding ways to cut through the noise. Um, that's a thing that happens a lot in comedy rooms. It's just like the bits, they're never ending, especially on this multicam. And so like this was my first time as a staff writer. So I was like, oh, some of that's gonna go in the script. No, none of it gets in the script. So you just wasted 4 hours. It's 8 p.m. and they're handing out dinner menus and like, we haven't even touched the script yet. So it's just a lot of like um managing time, being patient, getting your pitches in, even though like it's intimidating being a staff writer, being one of the only lower level writers amongst a lot of upper level writers. It's intimidating to pitch. It was really intimidating for me. Like the first week, I barely spoke, but it's important to find. It's important to pitch. It's important, it's important to find moments to like pitch your joke. It will fall flat sometimes. It's okay. No one's really thinking about you. I feel like I would get really self-conscious that, oh, everyone thinks I suck, but like that's not the case. Everyone pitches, everyone's jokes fall flat. And then like you'll throw in a pitch that sort of saves the day, which always feels really good. So yeah, again, I worked on a multicam, so it's very different from single cam. I'm sure Rupinder can speak to that, but it's really, really, it was really, really fast paced. And then like thinking of alts on the fly was a big deal. Like, because like, again, and this is important when you're writing for comedy, it's like sometimes you'll write a joke down thinking it is funny, and then you'll hear it out loud and it's still sort of funny, like, but then like you hear the actor deliver it and it just sort of falls flat, or it was funny the first 3 times and then the 4th and 5th time it didn't really work. You have to be able to adapt and change and come up with a lot of alts in front of a live audience. It's happening really fast. So it can be intimidating, but like you get really thick skin and it's also a lot of fun. And it just makes you a better writer. You get really quick with writing. So Sorry, that was a very convoluted way of
No, that was
answering.
such great information and advice. Thank you. Rupinder.
I did one multicam, Ida, and I agree it was absolutely punishing as a writer. It was
Yeah.
insane hours, and I said I can actually never do it again. It's
Yeah, same.
But I do mostly single cams. I've done a lot of cable shows. I'm on a network show now, so it's a very different universe. Because Ghost is also a 22 episode show, which is almost unheard of now. So there's probably like 3 of those currently on the air. So it is a very large room because there are 22 episodes to make, and we've already started shooting, and we end shooting in February. So the shoot schedule is so long, and we're writing and shooting at the same time. So, it's a lot of, you're breaking the stories and you kind of know half the season, but you don't know the other half of the season yet, and just kind of doing it all on the fly. But I would say, again, room sizes seem to really vary, I think, based upon the episode order. That seems to be the main thing. If you're doing 10 episodes, you don't need the amount of writers. It's a 22 episode show. And you're not going to have the same amount of weeks. But I do feel like, as Ida was saying, like a lot of your day is sort of just, you sit around a boardroom with people all day, and this is what other people can't understand, is you're basically in a meeting all day. You don't go to your office and spend time by yourself. You're just on the whole time, which can be a little bit mentally taxing. And sometimes, if you just don't feel funny or you don't have a lot to offer, unfortunately, that's your job. So you got to be bringing it all day, every day, and that is just what your job is. And it is great because there are a whole bunch of other people there, so they can kind of, you can riff off of each other and work off of each other, and that's a great thing. But it is a very collaborative environment. I feel like in the many years I've been doing this now, I've had the opportunity to learn from so many other people how to be in a room, what works in a room, how to be diplomatic in a room, and also respectful of other people, and yet, have your voice heard. And I feel like I do also feel like another thing that I find very encouraging is, in the beginning of my career, I was often the only woman in the room, and now I've been in rooms that are majority women, or at least it's 50-50. Like, it is completely different landscape there, which is really nice to see.
Awesome. How do you, for both of you, how do you know, one, when you know that you have to pitch an idea, like it has to come out, you can't hold it. And then on that same front, before that, like, who do you test your ideas on? Like, if you have something that's kind of bubbling, do you just throw it out in the room, or do you have like your group of people that you like, is this funny? Is this not funny? Do you have mentors that do that? Like, how do you guys test your material and then figure out what's pitchable?
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know, Ida, you might have a different answer, but I feel like I don't feel like there's time for you to do that. Like, you're often in a discussion about something like, what would this character be doing in the next scene? So you're solving that problem on the fly. So there really isn't time to go away, think about an idea, run it by anybody. You're just kind of throwing things out. And like Ida said, the thing is, your hit rate will be the same as everybody's. Some of your stuff will work, some of it won't, and you have to just learn to move on from it. Writers I've seen struggle have had a hard time with their pitches not going in or being accepted, and that's just sort of a thing you have to get over, because you're there to help make a show. It's not about you getting everything that you want into the show. You're part of a collaborative now.
Yeah, totally. You just have to learn to be a little less precious with your work, and just know that, like, exactly, it's a totally collaborative environment, and like, these aren't your jokes. You're writing jokes, or you're writing trying to fit the tone of the characters or what the showrunner wants. So it's like, that's kind of freeing in a way. And yeah, there isn't really time, like Rupinder was saying, it's like, I had an office. I was never in my office. So like, I was always in the fishbowl, the big meeting room. And sometimes it's like, it's 1 a.m. and we need 5 more alts for this page, or we need to figure out this like scene. I don't have time to really talk to my co-EP friend and pitch this idea to her before I pitch it to the room. Everyone's really exhausted, and like, you just start pitching. But I think it's important to also, you want the pitch to be good. Like, I'm not just like vomit pitching. Like,
Right.
I am very careful about what I'm pitching, even though, oh, it's late and we're tired and like we're trying to get the script out. I am still very careful about what I'm contributing because like people do remember when you have like when you're just kind of pitching gibberish. You're just like things that are like are in direct conflict of like the progress that's being made. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to like sometimes I there was a writer that I worked with who would only like their pitch was just to like say that something wasn't working and but they didn't have like a pitch to solve it. That's not really helpful.
Yes.
Don't do that. You know what I mean? You just want
Never
to you
do
want to
that.
never do that. You want to have a pitch that and even if you notice something's not working in the scene or with the character or whatever, um have a pitch to solve it before you highlight it in front of the whole group, especially if you're just a little staff writer, you know?
Right.
So I think it's just being careful about things like that. And Rupinder was saying this earlier, like you're spending 12 hours a day sometimes with these people. Like some a showrunner, I think when they're hiring, like, yes, they want the best writers in the room, but they also want to be around people that are positive and like they want to spend time with. So like just being conscious of like um the attitude or the what you're bringing to the table energy wise as well. You have to be on all the time, and that's why on multicams it's so hard because the hours are so intense. You're just always in the office and you always have to be on, but you get used to it.
On all the time, man. Let's just I'm going to ask just a couple more questions and then I'm going to open it up to audience questions. So if you have those, start writing them down so we can kind of pull them. Where do you find your inspiration for your own stories that you're writing your own stuff? Caitlin, I know that you talked about people watching sometimes. I'm the same way. I find so much joy and weirdness in watching people and what they're doing. Besides that, what else inspires you in your characters or the stories that you're writing or your stand-up, jokes?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think I've ever written a character that was just completely a new random person from my brain. Like it's always been someone that I either hate. I really like writing horrible people that I've encountered. And like it's always somebody that I've come across. But I think in regards to stand-up, what both of you just said is like just because something's funny for you to say does not mean it's funny to put in a script. And that's like one of the biggest issues I've seen because typically when male comedians find out what I do for work, they're like, here's my pilot. So I've read a lot of stand-up pilots and a lot of them don't work because it's literally just their stand-up jokes. And so I think you need to kind of like take your ego and take yourself out of it and be like, this is not about me. This is about the characters. I'm not part of this world. So yeah, so I never put I put my personality in obviously like the description, whatever else, but I don't really insert myself or my jokes in my writing. It's more based off people. I roasted a lot of people in a script I wrote. It's funny because my friend knew most of the people that I had drawn a lot of the inspiration from. And he was like, wait,
this sounds like
yeah. None of them were on him though, so that was good. But yeah, people watching, it'll do wonders for your writing.
That's funny. Beth, what about you? Where do you find inspiration for your stories?
So sometimes my husband and I will chat and we'll just have some back and forth, which is fun and helpful. But mostly I'm the opposite of Caitlin. Like I will, if I'm going through something personally, like for me, starting with theme is really important for any like feature, whatever project. Like what am I struggling with at the moment? So, and I will just shroud it and then use that as sort of my like jumping off point. So selfishly, I think I work through my own personal issues with writing. Like my Nickel script, I was dealing with a lot of hypochondria. And so I made this little girl character who her mom was agoraphobic and she had never been outside and she's been conditioned to fear. And she finally goes outside, confronts her fears. And so using my own fear, my own whatever, and then watching a character go where I can't go yet is what I use.
Awesome. When you started talking, I swear I thought you said nipple script and not
Yeah, me too.
I was like,
wait, what did I say?
Work it out. Like, oh, nickel script. Okay.
Yeah, I had to like put it
Nipple.
together.
Oh my God. So my nipple script.
I know. I was like, do tell. What?
But sometimes, that's great. Now I want to write a nipple script. Things come from somewhere. All right, carry on.
I love that. Rupinder, what about you? Where do you find inspiration for your own stories?
I think similar to Beth, I feel like these days I'm just kind of working through my own thoughts and feelings, and writing it down has become almost the easiest way for me to comprehend anything. So I'm not necessarily writing me in a character, but I am maybe writing a character who has some of the same thoughts or questions about the world that I have.
All right. And Ida.
Yeah, I mean, same. I journal a lot, and I'll notice a theme with something that I'm dealing with or something I'm thinking about a lot. And so usually like that germ of idea sort of starts when I'm journaling or through that. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. Everybody's different. I'm kind of a combination of everybody too. Like I love to pull in a weird person as a character that I saw doing something odd and be like, yes, pull that one in. But also I work through a lot of, it's like therapy. It's like figuring out what's the trauma that is continually triggering me. How do I work through this trauma and put it in? I write horror mostly, so put it into like the craziest horrific situation I can, and they make it through, so that's me. Last question, and it's kind of like the big question that we put at the end. What advice do you have, or what was the best advice you've ever received just in terms of being a female writer moving forward in your career? Is there something that you like to share, that you like to pay it forward with in helping other people? Ida, I'll start with you. Do you have any words of wisdom?
I think finding a community is really important. It can be really lonely, especially when you're starting out. And finding a community, I have a community of, they're mostly women writers, and so like whatever we're struggling with, whatever we're writing, it's just nice to have. Sometimes it's not even about writing. It's just nice to have that community. Like I moved to LA recently, like 2 years ago, and again, like I feel like writing can be a little bit isolating, and the city can sometimes be a little isolating. And so just having a really strong community of women just makes things a little easier. And even in a writer's room too. Like I was in a writer's room that was a little male dominated, and so I really I found the two other female writers, and I sort of clung on to them the entire time. And that was it was really helpful.
And do you do that also now moving forward?
Yes.
To sort of like take newer females?
Oh,
under your
for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. Beth, what about you?
Advice. I think like it's a muscle. I think showing up, it's the old adage of like just show up and write about your nipples. Just kidding. No, just showing up and really it takes time, not rushing. Like, we all think our first script is like amazing and like, oh, this is it. And, for instance, the script with Jackie Weaver, The Wonder Yard, that's filming later in 2025, that I think I was on maybe draft like 14 or 15, maybe. I don't even know. So it just takes longer than you think it will. Everything does. And to be in it for the joy. Also, like I said earlier, find your own weird, like find your own voice. I think I don't know if you listen to Screenwriter's Life, going towards the lava, going towards the thing that scares you the most is important. And having that, like, when you have a ping, recently I had a ping of like, I want to do a short film of my Nicole. And so I did it. And I think it's kind of like what Caitlin was saying. Like sometimes you get these feelings to do certain things, and I would just follow that because you're being led to do things for a certain reason. You're being led to tell stories for a certain reason. So listen to yourself, and sit down and make it a discipline. Just sit down and write, because it will just get easier in time once you know yourself and that side of yourself. And don't give up. It's so easy to give up. It is so easy to give up. You will be rejected. I mean, I was an actor, now a writer. You know, it's rejection is part of it, and it does make you stronger. So just keep going.
Awesome. Caitlin.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, a big thing in like moving forward in my career is not being afraid to ask to help or to ask to participate in something. The worst I can say is no to you. So that's something that I always recommend to people. And also something a college professor, this wasn't even film related, it was a neuroscience class, so it had nothing to do with this. But I remember on the day of our final, she was like, don't worry about this test. Like, this is one final that's part of this one class, that's part of this one semester, and part of this one part of your life. Like, what happens in this one test is not going to destroy your entire life. And I think that that's like a really important thing that I've had to keep in my brain is like, oh, this one rejection is just a small part of my week, which is a small part of my journey, which is,
Right.
it doesn't even matter. And I think, I mean, obviously taking rejection takes time. I started doing theater like 16 years ago at this point. So I've had a lot of rejection up until now. So I've built up the thick skin. But yeah, never be afraid to ask or do something. A lot of people are going to tell you no as a woman, but just got to keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going.
I'm similar to Ida, especially if you're in Los Angeles. I feel like community of other women is very helpful. I feel like I've collected women from every show I've been on, which has been helpful. On Ghosts, I just am in love with absolutely everybody, so I've decided to collect all of them, and they can never leave now. But you know, it makes a big difference because again, you are with these people 24/7, and it's nice to have people that you know and you trust and you can talk about actual life with. And I think that's my biggest piece of advice, is to have and retain a life outside of this, because I think it can be very, very all consuming. And sometimes, especially when you're in LA, it's just the only thing anybody talks about or cares about. And you can forget to have an actual life and things to write about and to nurture any other part of your life, because people are just really, you know, going for this one goal that everybody in the town has come to do the same thing and try to achieve the same thing. So I feel like it's good to check in with yourself and the other parts of your life and make sure you're nurturing those too and not letting all of those go just in the pursuit of this.
That's great advice too. Thank you all for offering so much good advice and just talking about your careers. There's like 3 questions in the Q&A that we can ask, and then I'm going to let everybody go and get on with your real lives, hopefully, except Ida, who's going to go right now and be like, ah,
Right.
It's not a question, but Lori said she donated. I guess there's a feature on here that you can like donate or something. I have no idea, but she said, I should have given more. No, that's totally fine. Sorry, it's my first time giving. Just wanted to make sure it worked. I am a bit embarrassed. This panel is worth $4 million. So that was a very sweet comment that was put in there. Okay, so Liz is asking, what is your view on screenplay contests? And do you have any suggestions for contests to enter a half-hour sitcom ensemble cast that takes place in a modern retirement community? Hi, Liz.
Hi, Liz. I made the pitch deck for this project, so I feel like I'm partially liking it. But I'll let somebody else comment on the contest.
I think they're great. I mean, again, like I was able to break through, if you can call it a breakthrough, through fellowships and contests. But when I was starting out, I was very particular about the kinds that I wanted to apply to, and I liked the ones that provided mentorship or connected you with a mentor, or there were or connected you with a community, like a fellowship. So it was like, so I was meeting other writers or meeting with a mentor, and I was working on my script. I applied less to just the contest that, like, you can place first, second, or third, and then that's it.
Mhm.
Those are also incredibly helpful and like wonderful accolades to have, and they help you as you apply to other things. But I feel like because I was just so new, mentorship and like having a community of other writers, knowing them was really important to me. And so I sort of geared more towards those.
I also want to give a shout. Like I found it before I won Nick Cole. I did Shore Scripts, which is a great one, and won that one. And they really helped foster. They got me a lawyer at the time. I was like, "Why do I need a lawyer?" The lawyer's like, "Do you want rep?" I was like, "Yes, I want women rep." And because I'd been with a man rep who was like, "Oh, this is your lane. You're only here." And then when I was with women, I was like, "Well, I have this comedy, I have this drama, I have this." They're like, "Yeah, okay, throw it all," which was really helpful. So Short Scripts was really a good one. And I think, like we said before, like all contests, some are a waste of money and some are great, and you just kind of never know sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think what Ida was saying was really right on.
It's just like really reading like what I don't want to say what you're getting because it's like,
Right, but what they're offering
well,
besides.
what they're offering. Yeah, exactly. Like I think that's because especially because some contests are like, apply to this, it's $200, you get nothing. It's like, well,
You get a fancy laurel, and you're like,
your
"Oh,
name is on a website. It's like, well, I don't really want that. So
okay." Any other say, or should I move on? Nope, good. Okay, Jeannie's asking, how much say do you have in how the lines are delivered by the actors? Do you guys have any say in that? Do you?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, you go to set often, not it depends. Every show is different again. And so there's usually a writer on set with the director who's giving notes, and sometimes the notes you have are, the line, we're sort of thinking it was this kind of thing. So you do have some say. You're not giving them necessarily line readings, but in comedy, I feel like, it does make a difference in a joke that it's pretty specific, so you can have some say in that.
And I think too, I'm a parenthetical whore. So like sometimes not whore, but like sometimes you kind of need it. And as an actor, I sometimes rely on it. Sometimes I would go a totally different direction had it not been for that parenthetical. So
That's a good note. Yeah, I like parentheticals too. Because it's like, get it right. Get that right. All right. Well, that is all of our questions on here. So again, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your very busy schedules to be part of this panel and talk about your careers and your advice. I think that doing stuff like this is just so generous, because I know that everybody's like so limited in free time. So thank you so much. Appreciate it immensely. And go check out Writers Guild Foundation and ISA. And everybody have a good night.